You know that your team sucks and mine is great. It's time for AFFL hate. Gonna make them pits, gonna make them mad. I'm gonna do them dirty. AFFL Week 3 preview. Picks were 2 and 4 last week. 6 and 6 on the season so far. My apologies. That was more embarrassing to me than actually losing last week. Before we get into the picks, let's talk about Scott and his many proposals for adjusting the league. Just at a base level, since Scott has been in this league for approximately 22 years, and all of his suggestions for the league seem to stem from some fundamental misunderstanding of the rules. Let's just ignore all of his proposals. Let's not do it. I'm against trying to trade dead money, because not only is 75% of this league lacking the brain power to comprehend those trades, what we're going to end up with is a situation where an 11th rounder is traded for 35 cents of cap room. Who cares? As for the college draft proposal, considering that Scott is, again, unable to understand the point of drafting and how to build a team, let's ignore his suggestions. Taking any suggestions on how to adjust the draft from Scott is like letting a vegan pick dessert. I mean, saying that the guys who've been picked up in free agency are better than everybody who's been drafted so far is just fundamentally untrue, but we can save that for another day. The point is, he's complaining there's not enough good players available in the draft, so his suggestion is, let's draft 48 potential rookies and take them out of the draft. The whole strategy of the rookies with the draft is, what round do you think you can get a guy in to get him at the cheapest possible price? You're trying to win those lottery tickets like Bry did with Cam Newton, or maybe I did with Manziel at 50 cents. You have a college draft of even 2 rounds. Not only do we not have enough guys to fill that out, you're going to end up with people drafting guys like, I don't know, Kadeem Carey, who end up not ending up in a good NFL situation and just get cut anyways. And besides, we can already pick up guys like Kadeem Carey. We don't need to draft them. You can pick them up at any time. And God knows, the last thing I want to do is stay up till 12:30 on a Saturday night watching Utah State BYU because I might have a receiver I want to draft. Terrible idea, terrible thought. Let's not let this go any further. Gary does an excellent job of running this league and thinking about the rules. Everything is fine. Let's move on. It's always runny in Philadelphia, 2-0. ISIS, 1-1. And this game is already 40.6-0, thanks mainly to last night's Atlanta-Tampa Bay game. I right now look like Tampa Bay going into halftime. The only difference is I haven't begun to play yet. And it's always runny in Philadelphia is more than halfway to their highest season total so far. So let's not be fooled by this total. Now, it was nice for little Barker that he got 16 points in total garbage time. Matt Ryan throwing a touchdown to Julio to make it 42-0. Steven Jackson pounding in a meaningless touchdown after Tampa Bay missed the shotgun snap and Atlanta recovered it at the 2. That made it 49-0. That was a freebie. And then Vincent Jackson at the end of the game scoring a touchdown for absolutely no reason whatsoever. All these junk points, that hurt me. I did not enjoy watching it. I didn't like it. But I'll say this. Runny has 40 right now. Shady's going to score 20 against Washington. That's guaranteed. That takes him up to 60. Ahmad Bradshaw against Jacksonville. Let's give him 10. That's 70. Greg Olsen, let's give him 8 against the Steelers. That's 78. McManus against Seattle. Let's give him 7. That's 85. Ravens defense. Let's give them like 2. That's 88. That's nothing. That is not a big deal. I can do that. Now, Kaepernick does have a tough matchup against Arizona, although he's played well against them in the past. Alshon Jeffrey going Monday night against the Jets secondary. Oh, yes, please, sign me up. There's a bunch of points there. But the key for me in this one, Packers-Lions, 1 p.m. on a Sunday. Lacey and Cobb, Joik and Cal, all playing in the same game. I need this game to finish 63-56. I mean, in an ideal world, that's what's going to happen. This game's going to take 4 hours because the teams are running up and down the field. I am a little nervous having so many eggs in one basket. If something goes oddly wrong and this game somehow finishes 17-10 because it's just a slop fest, I'm boned. I'm screwed. I'm on the outside looking in. And again, I do have those depth options. I'm a little worried about Lacey because of the slow start for him against two great defenses, and Detroit is pretty good against the run. I think Cobb, Cal, and Joik are going to run wild. So what do? Do I put in Ertz against the Washington defense? If A.J. Green plays with that toe, do I dare put him in? I mean, how do you bench a guy when he's as good as A.J. Green? But and then again, how do you put in a guy who missed the entire game last week after kickoff? Lamar Miller, number one back going up against a bad Chiefs defense. That's not a bad option. So I'm going to be leaving some points on the bench here. It's going to be a hard decision. I think I'm going to lean on Lacey. You got to play your stars. You can't overthink it. I've done it before. And I think everything's going to work out just fine for me. Don't worry about it. I'll catch Runny for the division lead after this one. I say ISIS 99. Runny, Philadelphia. In, always. It's, I think I messed that up. 88. Astanner, 1-1. Litbrick, 1-1. Now, I did say before the season it would be a little bit of an upset if the Albert family as a total had 15 wins for the season. Obviously, they're going to get one this week, Albert versus Albert battle, and I kind of forgot that two of them are in the same division, guaranteeing a couple wins there. But still, we are on pace. Only 2 Albert family wins through 2 weeks. Prorate that out. You do the math. I'll let you figure it out. But again, it is on pace. Chris got off to a little bit of a lead last night, 5.2-0, and 5 points for Mike Evans is better than anybody thought it was going to be in the first half. By the way, interesting note on the Bucs that I found out last night. Besides the fact that they overpaid for Josh McCown after he had 5 good games under Mark Trestman's awesome offense. Their offensive coordinator this year is Jeff Tedford. If you don't know who he was a college head coach at Cal for a long time, and he was considered to be the, quote, quarterback whisperer of the 90s until everybody realized that all of the quarterbacks he was sending into the pros were terrible. Yes, it's true, he discovered Aaron Rodgers at community college and brought him to Cal, but I think we might argue that Aaron Rodgers came sort of fully formed. The other quarterbacks that Tedford sent to the league, Kyle Bowler, Joey Harrington, Achilles Smith, Trent Dilfer, and then a bunch of guys that were so much worse than those guys, you never even heard of them. Point here is, I don't think Jeff Tedford knows what the hell he's doing with NFL quarterbacks. Mike Evans, Doug Martin, Bobby Rainey, Vincent Jackson, downgrade them all because Tedford is going to hold that team down. And my God, are they bad. Anyways, as for this one, right now the benches are actually more interesting than the starting lineup. Franchise player Chris Johnson can't get into the starting lineup for the Astander, even though he's facing a really bad Bears defense. Chris Ivory, that second Jets back that Chris thought he had to have. Maybe he's got a Chris thing going on, I don't know. Also playing a bad Bears defense. On the bench, the plodding Matt Asiata on the bench against a bad Saints defense. And in the starting lineup, Darren Sproles. Let me tell you about the rule of Sproles, Chris. I know you've been out of the league for a while, so maybe you aren't aware of this. What he basically does is he scores 20 points in 1 week, and then he scores 5 points in the next week. I don't care that they're playing Washington. That's the rule of Sproles. You can't fight it. C.J. Spiller going up against a nice San Diego defense and also losing carries quickly. Forget about it. Percy Harvin. Denver defense is a little faster. They might be ready for some of the tricks that Harvin had in the Super Bowl, so let's see what happens. Colson coming off a 0 last week. All of his targets going to Brandon Cooks, but New Orleans is finally back in the dome and should be looking to take the lid off of it a little bit. So Colson might be okay there. Maybe not. And Russell Wilson still in the starting lineup. I guess so. Again, Denver has a little faster defense, and they're out looking for revenge. And how many times have we seen it that there's a Super Bowl or a playoff blowout, and then the two teams meet again in the regular season, and then the team that got blown out gets a meaningless, quote, revenge win against the team that crushed him. I think Wilson might be held down a little bit this week as well. As for Gary, surprise, surprise, Alex Smith not in the starting lineup. I don't know, Gary really thought that was a good pick. It's almost like he was wrong about that. Also not in the starting lineup. 9th overall pick, Toby Gerhart. Also not in the starting lineup. 5th overall pick, Bishop Sankey. I'm starting to wonder if some of these picks were mistakes by Gary. However, that is not a de facto argument against the draft as a whole. Just because one guy screws things up a little bit doesn't mean you need to have a top 5 pick or nothing. Because, to continue to use Gary for example, he got Cordero Patterson in the second round, and he got Julius Thomas in the second round. He got Alex Smith in the third round. Well, shoot, I'm not helping my argument there. He got Julian Edelman in the third round, who's had 2 good games for him so far. He got Mike Wallace in the fourth round, who's looking to shape up to be pretty decent this year. Jeremy Hill in the 7th round, who's shaping up to be a great pick for this year and maybe for the future. Or look at the 11th round, when I got Mark Ingram, who's had 2 great games. Going to miss some time for his broken hand, but it looks like he's going to have a great season. I mean, there's a few metrics you can use to measure the players who are drafted and their performance against the guys that are the free training camp invites or guys that are picked up during the season. I would just use the wisdom of crowds. Logically, the guys that are drafted are better and in more demand than the guys who are not drafted and picked up later. Now, if you want to argue that you can use the free agent pile to put a good team together because you steal a back off the free agent wire in week 4 after the starter was hurt, or because Timmy doesn't know how to manage his cap situation in the draft and has to drop Phillip Rivers, that's one thing, but that is a, let's call it, really bad argument that makes no sense. But anyways, let's move on. I like Gary this week because Andrew Luck going up against Jacksonville is really nice. Donald Brown, I don't love it because Buffalo has a really good defense and San Diego's traveling all the way across the country. I might put Hill in against Tennessee. That's me. I might put Pete Garçon back in just to give him a chance because the Eagles' secondary is really, really bad. And Cousins likes throwing to him. But Patterson on the dome against the Saints, I like that. He should be getting lots of chances with Peterson out. Edelman, 2 weeks in a row, I've said I don't think he's going to do anything. 2 weeks in a row, he's had 10-plus points, so I give up. He's going to have another 12 points this week. Mike Wallace against Kansas City, I like him getting deep a couple of times. Julius Thomas might be a little trouble against that Seattle secondary and linebacking core. He could be held down a little bit. But overall, I think Gary's got this one. Not convincingly. He's not going to look great at the end of this one, but he's going to come off of a smoking, smoldering heap of rubble in better shape than Christian is. I say, let Breck, 81, Ass Tanner, 73. That Kangaroo stole my ball, 1-1. Riggins Riggs, 1-1. Bry got out to a 16-0 lead last night thanks to Matt Bryant and the Buccaneers defense. Do you realize the Buccaneers defense had 8 points in a 56-14 loss? Now, they did have a cheap defensive touchdown late. They had an interception. They had 3 fumble recoveries. And then when you consider that the Falcons had a punt return touchdown, an interception touchdown on their own, 1 touchdown drive that was 2 yards, another touchdown drive that was about 25 yards, the Bucs actually came out of that pretty well, considering. Might actually outscore the Texans' defense for Barker. Not that the Giants are that good, but 8 points is pretty good for a defense. Weird, wild stuff right there. As for this game, Cam has an A-plus matchup against the Steelers' defense, which Scott has under contract for 3 years. Ron Rivera came out and said, yeah, Cam is dealing with ankle pain, he's dealing with rib pain, and he probably will be dealing with it all season. Bad news for Brady here, but the good news is Cam is essentially getting a week off. Steelers' defense gets no pressure on the quarterback. They never touch the quarterback. Cam will basically be able to sit back in the pocket and really rest his aching body while putting up some great points. So good for Brady. Alfred Morris against Philadelphia. That's a decent matchup unless Philly passes Washington out of the game in the first half and Washington needs to air it out. But if they have enough time and enough patience, they should be able to get Morris going. Rashad Jennings against Houston. That whole Giants situation is immense. And Crabtree, Patrick Peterson is going to shut him down and shut him off this week. Don't expect a lot there. Brandon Marshall, however, will more than make it up against the Jets. Antonio Brown, Carolina's got a really good defense. They have a little trouble in the secondary. They got a really good defense. On the other hand, Steelers will probably pass this whole game in order to catch up, so look for a good game for Brown. Riggins Riggs, tell you what, they got both quarterbacks in the Titans-Bengals matchup. What more can you ask for in life than your choice of Andy Dalton or Jake Locker? Now here's where the Breeze trade potentially gets interesting. This is the first real week where you have Breeze at home in the Dome against a Vikings team that got blown out last week. This could be the first game for Barker where he wishes he had Breeze. Of course, having 16 extra draft picks probably helps the sting a little bit, but Dalton will have a decent game against Tennessee perhaps if A.J. Green plays. Here's the thing. If A.J. Green doesn't play, and the number one receiver for the Bengals is Sanu, and the Bengals realize that between Gio and Hill and a weird Tennessee defensive scheme, they can run the ball all day. They probably will, and that's going to keep Dalton around to 12, 13 points. Forte against the Jets. Jets have a good run defense. Terrible pass defense, good run defense. Look for Forte to be held down. But Jordy Nelson against Detroit, oh my, A++ matchup. He'll make up for Forte. Steve Smith, he's going to draw Joe Hayden in coverage. I don't think Steve Smith is going to have a third good game in a row. I think Cleveland is actually going to keep this game close. And somebody's going to win it on a late field goal. Probably make it, let's call it 19-17, the winning score there. So I don't expect a ton out of Steve Smith. And Dez has a good matchup. But if that Rams front four can finally get going, it's really a front three with Chris Long out for 10 weeks. But if they can get going and they can get to the hobbled, brittled Tony Romo, that's going to keep Dez down. Because Romo's going to be hearing footsteps the first time somebody plows into his surgically repaired back. Jimmy Graham, nobody can stop him. Nate Freeze, anybody can stop him. Lions would like to stop him from kicking. So overall, when you look at this game as a whole, kind of like Bry here, Riggins-Riggs, a lot of good players, a lot of name recognition, but a lot of problems with the matchups, whereas Bry's going to get Antonio, Marshall, Alf, and Cam just running wild. And again, 8 points from a defense in a game that they lost 56-14. That shows you that luck is on your side. That kangaroo stole my ball, 94. Riggins-Riggs, 88. Little Baby Jesus, 1-1. Timmy doesn't have any friends, 0-2. Little Baby Jesus got out to an 8.5-0 lead last night. And 8.5 points for Bobby Rainey is fantastic, especially when it looked like he was going to be benched after that second fumble and only put up 1 point on the evening. I guess Levy decided, hey, what the heck, we're down 40. Put him back in. Who cares? You get a bunch of junk yards late, getting it up to 8.5. Good for him. Way to go. CBS projected him to put up 15.1. I don't know who was responsible for that projection, but they should not cash their check this week. Now, everything is set up for Scott to get his first win of the season. He's got Breeze at home in the Dome. That's really pretty much all he has. I guess he has Lynch going up against Denver, but again, that Denver defense is better and faster now, and Lynch is a little dinged up. They're going to be out for blood, so I don't expect a ton from Lynch there. Adrian Peterson, of course, on the bench. Nice of Scott to put him on the trading block in case anybody wants him. Hey, if you want a franchise player who's about $2.45 and is a running back who's 30 and may not play again this season and who knows where he'll be next season, he can be yours. Okay? All Scott's asking for is, like a 9th, 10th, 11th round draft pick. Now, sure, it's true that there are only 2 teams in the league for whom AP would be an improvement at the franchise spot. One of them is Chris Albert. Maybe some shenanigans can take place there. Or Timmy. Trading with Timmy is a whole separate issue. And here's something that's interesting. As I had mentioned before, A.J. Green is on the block as a franchise player still, because I do want to franchise Lacey, at least for now. But the way this season is going, I might change my plans. Here's the problem for Scott. He can't make that trade for A.J. Green because he has nothing left to trade. He has no more to give. And while Breeze for every 2015 draft pick and Phillip Rivers for Torrey Smith and his 2 points this season would normally have me chomping at the bit to trade with Scott, sort of a dream come true situation, he's got nothing. He's got nothing to offer. And now he's stuck. But can he at least get a win this week to stop the bleeding, to sort of fool himself into thinking at 1-2 maybe he's still got a chance? Well, again, Breeze at home in the Dome, he's going to put up a lot of points. Woodhead going up against Buffalo. Again, that Buffalo defense is good, and San Diego is flying across the country. Woodhead's going to be held down. We said Lynch. I'm looking for 11 points out of Marshawn, not one of these 20-point games. Pete Thomas going up against Minnesota. He's at home. He could, but they're saying Kerry Robinson's the main guy, so Thomas is going to continue looking at third and long duty. Kendall Wright got a 3-year contract last week. Paid Scott back with 3 points. Don't expect him to do a lot against Cincinnati. Cincinnati's got a good defense, good pass rush, good secondary. Jake Locker looked so bad. Torrey Smith, he has 2 points this week. I'm sorry. That's 2 points on the entire season. Foolish of me to give Torrey Smith that much credit to think he could score 2 points in an entire week. Question for Cleveland is they put Joe Hayden on Steve Smith or Torrey Smith. Who do they think is better? But it doesn't matter. They have a good pass rush. They have a good secondary. Baltimore's on the road and not even looking at Torrey Smith. Don't expect him to do a lot much there. Gostkowski, he should have a good game with the Patriots running it up against the Raiders. In fact, I'm going to make a prediction right now. Gostkowski is going to be Scott's second highest scoring player this week after Breeze. Steelers defense against Carolina, forget it. Awful. Terrible. If they even get Cam's uniform dirty, they should get a bonus point. Just for that, it would be a step up for them. As for little baby Jesus, Aaron Rodgers going up against Detroit, he has feasted on them. Not as much in Detroit, but still, gotta like that. Ellington against San Francisco. San Francisco defense not as good. Sammy Watkins, he's boom or bust right now as most rookie receivers. He could have 15 points. He could have 5 points. But Keenan Allen, I like him a lot because Phillip Rivers is having a great season. Going to finish probably top 5 fantasy quarterback this season. Phillip Rivers would be a great addition to any team. Gronk, you don't know what you're going to get with Gronk with him hurt. I mean, if Patriots start blowing out the Raiders early, they probably rest Gronk to not make things worse. But if he gets a first quarter touchdown, that's real. Help out little baby Jesus. But look at the bench for little baby Jesus. Look at the name recognition. Reggie Bush on the bench right now. Wes Welker, he's back this week, but he's still sort of concussed. His bell is still ringing a little bit, and he's playing Seattle, so you can't put him in. Larry Fitzgerald on the bench. Interesting. And here's something else that's interesting. Little baby Jesus has both kickers in the Cardinals-Niner game, Catanzaro and Phil Dawson. Right now they're playing Catanzaro. I guess they're saying they think Arizona will win this game or have more field goals or the kicker will have more points. I don't know. That feels like a decision that you're bound to get wrong. So what do we have here? On the one hand, we have a chance for little baby Jesus to get to 2-1 and sort of pay off my bold preseason prediction that they would win their division. On the other hand, you have Scott with a chance to get his first win. Both teams are going to be dealing with a lot of disappointment in the starting lineup this week. Both teams are going to need their quarterbacks to carry them. Both teams are going to get one other surprise guy that makes a difference. And I say it's Keenan Allen. Little baby Jesus, 79. Timmy doesn't have any friends, 68. Hagak! 1-1. Sigmund and the Sea Monsters, 0-2. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this game because I don't want to say anything that inadvertently offends Tim, as I don't know him. I thought, from the emails and the actions that I kind of had the gist of Tim, but apparently I don't know him. And also, this game is going to be a stone-cold blowout for Sigmund, Manning and Ball going up against Seattle. That didn't work so well the last time they faced each other. Now Davis against Miami. Yeah, he might start, or Charles might come back and take some of those starts. And even when he got like 22 carries last week, he was under 4 yards a carry. Miami defense is good, not going to get a lot of points there. Michael Floyd might get a lot of points, might have a chance against a bad Niners secondary, but do you want to count on Drew Stanton going into San Francisco and putting up a lot of points for Michael Floyd? Kelvin Benjamin, good player. Steelers defense is bad, but Ike still has been able to shut down the number ones a little bit. And Anquan Bolden might have a good game, but there is a good defense for the Cardinals and the Lions defense going up against Green Bay. A good chance that they put up somewhere in the range of -1 to 1 point, assuming Timmy doesn't change out that defense at 12:59 p.m. on Sunday. Maybe go back to the Jags. And for Hagak, Cutler against the Jets, yes. Foster against the Giants, yes. He looks like he's been staying healthy, proving me wrong. DeMarco could get yards on the Rams if Dallas commits to the run and doesn't expose Tony Romo to injury. Ridley, he had a good game last week, which means New England will go back to Shane Vereen because that's how these things work. But Golden Tate, very quietly, a great pickup for Hagak and the Lions. Look for him to put up points against Green Bay, maybe even get into the end zone. And Demaryius, they are playing Seattle. That was bad, but in the Super Bowl, Demaryius actually had a pretty good game, so I feel like Peyton will be able to get the ball to him. But, that means points for Demaryius, not necessarily as many points for Peyton. Robbie Gould against that Jets defense. Look for points out of Chicago. And then the Packers defense on the other hand playing Detroit, so they also are going to be somewhere in that range of -1 to 1 point. But Hagak wins this one going away. Hagak, 102, and suddenly looking like the most dominant team in the league. Sigmund and the Sea Monsters, 77. The Whitechapel Rippers 2-0, Animal House 1-1. The magical season for Whitechapel continues. Let's just look at three good things that happened for them last night. One, junk time touchdown to Julio Jones to make it 42-0. Now, you could argue that the entirety of that game was junk time, but Julio finishes with 160, 2 TDs, 28 points. Doug Martin scratched before the game, so any temptation Larry would have had to play Doug Martin against that Falcons defense was gone, so he's on the bench with that 0. And then Harry Douglas, who started off strong in place of Roddy White, got hurt, went out of the game with only 7 points. Everything is turning up Larry. Now he's got Matt Stafford going up against that terrible Packers defense at home. He's got Shane Vereen, who, like I said, will have a good game this week because it was Ridley with the good game last week. Gio Bernard going to be running wild against Tennessee for sure. Brandon Cooks into the starting lineup finally, and the Saints are throwing to him a ton. Emmanuel Sanders against the Seahawks, that is one that I don't love a ton, but it's probably the best option considering the guys he has. As for Animal House, who had a great year last year, things are falling apart quickly. Tom Brady, you would think he would tear up Oakland, but he's just not the same guy he was. Le'Veon, that Carolina defense is tough. Jerick McKinnon, I think he had like 2 carries last week. I understand that Peterson is out, but Matt Asiata is in front of McKinnon on the depth chart. Minnesota is going to be trailing the whole game. And then the other problem is, after Castle last week, New Orleans is just going to stack the box and dare the Vikings to throw. You can forget about McKinnon. Andre Johnson, he might be okay. He might get to 10 to 15 points. Macklin against Washington, not bad. Not terrible, but you look at the rest of this bench. I mean, even if Jamal Charles gets in the game, do you start a guy with a high ankle sprain facing a good defense, even if he is Jamal Charles? Ben Tate's hurt. John Grimes, I don't even know why he's on this roster. Ryan Matthews is hurt. Roddy White, hurt, out. Really could have used Roddy White last night. So, all in all, there's not too much to think about here. Whitechapel is going to move to 3-0. Maybe they're the kings of this league. I say Whitechapel 91, Animal House 75. So there you have it, folks. Week 3 picks in the book. They will be better than last week. ISIS will be better than last week. Some teams in this league folding it in after this week. Other teams, like Whitechapel, starting to celebrate after this week. Let's go get them.